We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Chesam at Beis Meseches Menachos. This is Menachos Daf 38b. This Daf is sponsored by Shalom ben Naim, Le'iloi Nishmat Moshe Eliyahu ben David. Thank you for your sponsorship. If you would like to sponsor an Amud or a Daf, see the description box below, and see the description box below to see how you can support this channel. On the previous Amud, the Mishnah said that the Tchelas is not Ma'akev the Lavan, and the Lavan is not Ma'akev the Tchelas, meaning to say, if all of the threads of the tzitzis would be blue, or all of the threads would be white, one would still fulfill the mitzvah. And the Gemara asked on the previous Amud, does our Mishnah not follow Rebbe? Because Rebbe says the Tchelas is Ma'akev the Lavan is Ma'akev the Tchelas. And the Gemara in the previous Amud said that really the Mishnah could also be Rebbe. Rebbe is talking about in terms of precedence. In other words, it is a mitzvah that the white threads should be inserted before the blue threads. That's how Rashi understands. But if one inserts it out of order, one still fulfills the mitzvah, but he is chiser mitzvah. He is lacking in the mitzvah. And the Gemara asked on the previous Amud, what does it mean, chiser mitzvah? And the Gemara now continues and says, Ilema chiser mitzvah de lavan. If you're going to say that it means that he's missing the mitzvah of the lavan of the white threads, v'kayim mitzvah de tchelas, and he fulfills the mitzvah of the tchelas of the blue threads, but l'Rebbe ikuvei ma'akev adadi. But according to Rebbe, they are ma'akev one another. In other words, Rebbe does say that the blue is ma'akev the white is ma'akev the blue, and so therefore if he was missing the mitzvah of the lavan, he'd be missing the mitzvah of the tchelas as well. And so therefore, what does it mean, chiser mitzvah? And so the Gemara continues and says, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda says that Rav says, shechiser mitzvah, he's missing a mitzvah, v'asa mitzvah, but he's also fulfilled a mitzvah. Umay chiser mitzvah, and what does it mean that he's missing a mitzvah? De lo avad mitzvah min hamuvchar. It simply means that he has not done the mitzvah to the best possible extent. And Rashi explains, Ilema chiser mitzvah de lavan, if what it means is that he's missing the mitzvah of the white threads, v'havikilu lo nasnu legamri, it's as if he hasn't inserted the white threads at all. So then amay yotzes, and why would he have fulfilled the mitzvah? Hal the Rebbe ikuvei me'akva, but according to Rebbe, they are required for one another. Umas nisin karebi ukmalon, we're saying that our Mishnah is following Rebbe. And so the Gemara instead said, chiser mitzvah, mitzvahs hakdama. He's missing out on the mitzvah of what takes precedence, v'yasa mitzvah, but he has done a mitzvah, de'iko lavan utchelas, because there is the lavan and the tchelas in this situation. It's considered that the white and blue threads are in fact present. But the Gemara continues and asks, this explanation that we're giving in the Mishnah to say that the Mishnah can follow Rebbe as well, we're saying that what does it mean the Lavan is not ma'akev the tchelas in the Mishnah, because really they are ma'akev one another according to Rebbe. It simply means in terms of precedence, Lavan is eino ma'akev es ha-tchelas. If the Lavan is inserted after the tchelas, it is still okay. That's what the Mishnah means. But that's okay for that line in the Mishnah. That particular line in the Mishnah of Lavan eino ma'akev es ha-tchelas, we can interpret in that fashion. But tchelas deina ma'akev es ha-lavan, but the line in the Mishnah which says that tchelas is not ma'akev the lavan, so what does that mean according to this explanation? Rashi explains tchelas dein ma'akev es lavan. It says the blue threads don't hold back the lavan, the white threads. What does that mean? Demashma, because that would be understood as follows: im hiktim lavan. It would sound like it's saying, let's say the lavan went first, but but what's the holding back over there? The lavan is supposed to go first, so that line doesn't make sense according to this interpretation of the Mishnah, again, that the Mishnah is following Rebbe. And the Gemara continues and answers, Amar Rami Bar Chama says, Lo nitzracha, it's not necessary, ella, only for the following. The Mishnah in that line means the following, L'talis shakula tchelas. We're talking here about a talis that is entirely made of tchelas. And the Gemara continues, Itmar Nami, it was stated as well, Amar Le Levi l'Shmuel, Levi said to Shmuel, Aryoch, and the word Aryoch is a reference to Shmuel, literally means king. We'll see Rashi in a moment. He said, Lo teisav akarech, do not sit on your feet, ad mefareshes li l'hamilsa, until you explain the following to me. Hatchelas eino ma'akeves es halavan, v'halavan eino ma'akeves hatchelas. Mahi, what does it mean when it says that tchelas is not ma'akev the lavan, and the lavan is not ma'akev the tchelas? Amar Lei said to him, Lo nitzrucha ela l'sadin b'tzitzis. It's needed for a linen garment that you're putting tzitzis on. To mitzvah la'akdume lavan b'reisha, the mitzvah is to put the white threads first. My time, and what's the reason? Haknaf min knaf, because the corner, it should be of the same type as the corner, therefore the white threads go first. V'yakdim tchelas l'lavan, but if the blue threads are first, less lanba, then that's not a problem. And so the Gemara now continues and asks, similar to above, Teinach lavan de'eno ma'akev zatchelas. That's a good explanation of the line that the white threads are not ma'akev the blue threads. But tchelas deina ma'akeves as halavan mahi, but the blue threads not being ma'akev the white threads, how do you explain that? Amar le Rami Bar Chama said to him, Lo nitzrucha ela letalis shakula tchelas. It's necessary only for the case of a talis that is entirely tchelas, it's entirely blue. In that case, the mitzvah la'akdume tchelas bereisha, in that case, it's actually a mitzvah to insert the blue threads first, the haknaf min knaf, because again, it should be the same as the corner. If the entire garment is blue, then what should be inserted in the corner first should also be blue. And the Mishnah is saying, v'akdim lavan bereisha, that if the lavan, if the white threads are inserted first, less lanba, that is not a problem. But the Gemara continues, Amar Rava says, Midit Siva Kagarim, is the color what causes it? Is the color critical over here? That's not the critical component. Ela Amar Rava, rather Rava says, Lo nitzrucha ela ligardumin. The Mishnah is necessary for gardumin, which means, let's say the threads are cut, let's say they're severed. That's what the Mishnah is teaching when it says the lavan is not ma'akev the tchelas, and the tchelas is not ma'akev the lavan. It means as follows: the gardim tchelas, let's say the blue threads are cut, v'koi lavan, but the white threads still remain. V'gardim lavan, or let's say the white threads are cut, v'koi tchelas, and the tchelas, the blue threads, still remain. The Mishnah is saying less lanba. That is not an issue as long as you have a minimal amount of the thread, that is going to be sufficient. Tiamri b'nei Rebbe Chia, because the sons of Rebbe Chia say, Gardume tchelas ksherin, the small amount of thread that's left of the tchelas is kosher. The Gardume ezov ksherin, and the Gardume ezov that refers to the hyssop, that also is going to be kosher. And that is a reference to the Azov, the hyssop involved in the Mechatos, the waters of purification, which are involved with the Para Aduma, the Kama Shir Garduman, and how much has to be left that it's considered a sufficient amount that it's not problematic. Amar Bar Hamduri, Amar Shmuel, Bar Hamduri says that Shmuel says, Kedei La'anvan, it has to be enough that you can tie it in a slip knot or tie it in a bow, that is sufficient. And Rashi explains, Aryoch Lashon Melech, again, Aryoch is the language of a king, Kimo Gur Arya Yehuda, like the pasuk Gur Aryeh Yehuda, which is a reference to kingship. Lahachi Kari l'Shmuel Aryoch, and the reason why Shmuel is called Aryoch, the Kaimalan Halacha k'Shmuel Bedini, because we've established that the halacha is like Shmuel in monetary cases. Kihechi the Dina de Malchusa Dina, just like the law of the land, the law of the king is considered to be the law. And Rashi continues, Lachi Nakat Sadin, the reason we talk about linen garments, Mishum Delavanu, because it's colored white. And so again, initially the Gemara understood that it goes by the color, but then the Gemara asked, Midit Siva Garim, is it really the color which is the cause over here? And the Rashi explains, Afilu Kula Tchelas Nami, even if the garment was entirely blue, Mitzvah Lahaktim Lavan L'Tchelas, still the white should precede the blue. However, Verov Talisos Lavanos, since the majority of garments of Talisos are white, and so Lavan Kagarim, and so therefore again it should be Lavan. Ulahachiksiv Tchelas Achar Knaf Deliolam Yeham Ocher, that's why Tchelas is written after, because it should always be last. And so then the Gemara said, Igardam Nifsiku Hachutin Shal Tzitzis, we're talking about if they get cut, if the threads are cut, Gardum and Hainu Shireh, that's the stubs that remain, Shenishtairu Lachar Shenifsiku, whatever remains after it's cut. And how much has to remain? Again, the Gemara said enough to tie a bow or to tie a slip knot. And the Gemara continues, Iboilahu, they had the following question, Kedei La'anvan, when we say it's enough to tie them in a slip knot or a bow, is that La'anvan Kulu Bahadodi, is that to tie all of them in a bow together, O Dilma Kol Chad V'chad L'chudei, or maybe just each thread independently? And the Gemara says, Teiku, the Gemara leaves that as a question. And Rashi explains, Kedei lanov kol hachutin ahadadi dahainu shir gadol, would have to be larger if you're tying them all in that fashion. And again, the Gemara said teiku, the Gemara left that as a question. And the Gemara continues, boy Ravashi, Ravashi asks the following question, Alimi delo ma'anvi, what if they're thicker strings so they can't be tied in that bow? V'hava katini me'anvi, but if they were thinner, they could have been tied. So what's the halach in that case? Is that still going to be okay? Because in theory, it can be tied in that slip knot. Amar le Ravacha brei de Rav le Ravashi, Ravacha the son of Rava said to Ravashi, Kol shekena, all the more so that it should be acceptable in that fashion, the minkar mitzvah sayu, because there the mitzvah is recognizable. If the mitzvah is recognizable, all the more so that should be a fulfillment of the mitzvah. And Rashi explains, Alime is avim, Alime means thick, Diavi Ketini, that if they were dakim, if they were thin, Have me'anvi, you would be able to tie them in that bow. Da'aruchen en kolkach, they're long enough. Aval mipnei ovion have a katanim lanov, but since they're thick, it's more difficult to do. Kol shekein diksherin, so the response was certainly that's kosher. Tohoel v'ilo have dakim kolkach kasherim, since if they would have been thin, it would have been kosher. Da'aruchen en, they're long enough, kadei aniva, they're long enough to tie in that fashion. So kol shekein kashem avim, certainly if they're thick, the minkor mitzvah sayin tefei, there it's even more recognizable, the mitzvah, so certainly that will be a fulfillment of the mitzvah. And the Gemara continues, Uman Tana de Polygal ad Rebbe. Now, who's the Tana that argues on Rebbe? Again, Rebbe is saying that the Tchelis is Makev, the Lavan is Makev, the Tchelis. Who argues with Rebbe? The Gemara says, Hi Tana, it's the following Tana. The Tanya, as we learned in a Brisa, Rabbi Yitzchak Omer Mishum Rabbi Nosson, Shomer Mishum Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Rabbi Yitzchak says in the name of Rabbi Nosson, who says in the name of Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Shomer Mishum Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, who says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Ein lo Tchelis, if he has no Tchelis, if he has no blue threads, Mata Lavan, so then he can put in the white threads, and that is a fulfillment of the mitzvah. And Rashi explains, Uman Tana de Polygal de Rebbe, who's the Tana that argues on Rebbe? Hana Chachamim de Amri Le'el Ein Ma'akvin Zeh, those Chachamim who say they're not Ma'akev one another. The Tchelis is not Ma'akev the Lavan and vice versa. Mata Lavan, again, you put in the white thread, Kol Hadalet Chut, and all four of the threads can be white. Again, that's going to be the opinion of the Chachamim, and that's identified in this Brisa as Rabbi Yitzchak, from Rabbi Nosson, from Rabbi Yossi Aglili, from Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rava says, Shma Mino, we see from the sons of Rabbi Chia, who say that the stubs of the threads are still kosher, that Sarech Likshor al Kol Chulya v'Chulya, that every single braid that is made, you have to tie another knot. In other words, when the threads are put through the corner of the garment, they would then loop one of the threads around the other threads. That's called braiding of the threads. And so then you have to tie a knot after each set. It's not enough just to loop it and then tuck it in and then do the loops again. Rather, there has to be a knot there every single time, says Rava. Because if it should enter your mind that you don't need to tie a knot every time, you just tie one knot at the end. So then, Hadi Amri b'nei Rabbi Chia, that which the sons of Rabbi Chia said, Gardume tchelas ksherin v'gardume ezov ksherin, that the stubs of the tchelas are kosher and the stubs of the hyssop are kosher. So the assumption over here of Rava is that last knot, if there's only a tiny amount of thread there and a tore, it's going to fall apart. And kevan dishtari le'iloi, if that top knot, it really means the bottom knot, it means the knot furthest away from the garment. If that knot becomes undone, ishtari le'kula, so then everything, the entire braid is going to be undone, unless you say there are multiple knots. Every single time the looping is done, there's a knot after it, and so then those will still be protected. That's what Rava essentially is saying. And Rashi explains, Shmami Nomi Da'amri b'nei Rabbi Chia Gardume tchelas ksherim, from the fact that the sons of Rabbi Chia say the stubs of the threads are kosher. Amai, why? Hakeven the nifsa ktsas, once it breaks a little, Hagadil, once that starts to break, that braid, mishtriyahu kesher, the whole kesher is going to be undone. Shebesof hagadil, that's at the end of the looping of the braiding. V'kevan de mishtriyahu kesher, and when that knot comes undone, mishtri hagadil, so the entire braid is going to come undone, is going to become undone. Vein sham gadil klal, you're going to have no braid at all. Elashmami, no, rather we see from here, yesh kesher bechol cholya, that at every braiding there's another knot. Hilkach ki mishtriyahu kesher, therefore when that last knot becomes undone, miskayim hagadil b'shar ksharim, you still fulfill the idea of braiding it with the other knots. Eloi, the top one, hainu ahu kesher tachton, that actually is really the bottom knot in terms of the fact that it's hanging from the garment. Demilmata lamala kachashiv, because we're counting from the bottom upward. We're going from the one that's furthest away from the garment. V'yo de v'gardumen kamayri, and furthermore we're talking about the gardumen, the stubs of the threads. V'shmaitinu v'gardumen mukafin havalu iu elyon. So then again, that's going to refer to the upper one in such a situation. The upper one again is the one that's really at the bottom, furthest away from the garment, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Tes Amud Aleph.